This is called the Zeus of Olympia. It was inspired, oh gosh, what did I say, 85? Okay. I started it in November of 1985. I read a book by a man named Hugh Gallagher, a polio survivor, who wrote a book called The Splendid Deception. Let me back up here, that's not right. Hugh Gallagher wrote a book called FDR's Splendid Deception. I don't remember when I read it exactly, but it inspired me to do this painting. So I'm also a polio survivor. I began this picture in November of 1985, and I actually exhibited the bottom panel. The section, oh gosh, I think, is this it? I think from here to there, that's the bottom part. And at the bottom it just had the word Zeus engraved below the temple portico. I exhibited the bottom panel in a membership show at the Fairfield Art Association, and at the time I was doing lots of corncob imagery, a lot of corn imagery in paintings. I'd done like the Venice of Iowa, where I replaced the trees in Central Park with monumental ears of corn. It was based on a 1910-ish postcard view of the square. I had done a picture for City Hall called 1910, which we can look at later. It's leading up over there. That had giant corn cobs in it. I did sketches for a picture that I've never done called the Athens of Iowa. I took the Porch of the Maidens and gave the carotid pillar ladies bib overalls, and I used kernels of corn for dentals, like I've done right there in that drawing. And I may yet do that painting. It would be nice because it would be a fun picture. And here again, I used ears of corn for the Doric columns, and I used that motif in this picture. Anyway, this is modeled after the Zeus of Olympia, which is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And I thought it would be fun. Here again, this kind of playful parody of an historic motif. And Franklin Roosevelt, of course, was stricken with polio when he was an adult in the 20s. And his splendid deception was creating the image of a robust physical vitality to the American public. If they'd known how helpless he was in reality, he probably would never have been elected to public office. There's only one known photograph of him in his wheelchair, and that's the image I used. Combination of that image and then the raised arm was from a political campaign in the 30s. And I combined the two. And then I realized after I had exhibited it that the perspective on the wheelchair was terrible. And I took it out of the frame, stuck it in my portfolio for a good 25, maybe 30 years, and then resumed work on it a few months ago, which coincided with the 65th anniversary of my having contracted polio in 1954. So this is all about survival and role models and a can-do attitude. I had intended from the beginning to have the pediment at the top with Franklin Roosevelt's leg braces sculpted in the for heaven's sakes, I forget the architectural term. This was before the internet, and I had a terrible time finding pictures of the leg braces. And then when I finally did, I got distracted and it all got stuck away. Well, with the internet, I was able to find them easily, and I began work again a few months ago. Originally, the pediment was going to be on the mat surrounding that lower panel. And I had the mat cut. But it stood in a corner for years and years, and eventually had coffee spilled on it, and I just threw it away because it was not in good shape. And then I forgot about the mat. And when I recommenced work on it a few months ago, I just added another panel. Well, then I realized the new panel was not wide enough to accommodate the roof line, the eaves poking out on either side. So if you look real closely, there are lots and lots of seams where mat board comes together. And that actually became kind of a fun kind of sub motif in the picture. So you have like, that crack right there in the roof line. I made it look like a crack in the, or a seam in the masonry, when in fact it really is where two pieces of cardboard meet. And then that real rough edge right there for the mat, that's real heavy mat board that I scored lines with a knife, and then I took a brush and I dampened the score, and then I bent it back and forth and wet it again so it became soft enough that I could tear it. And then I took acrylic varnish and varnished the edges, because when you tear that ragboard, it's real linty, and I didn't want lint falling into the picture when it was under glass. So I sealed that off, and that becomes a kind of a design element. And like the Communion of Saint pictures, we cut extra notches in the mat and created just a kind of a fun pastiche, kind of a cobbled together, make it do sort of approach, which I like. One architectural term I do know is the acroteria. And these are the decorative corn thingamabobs on top of the roof. And you see those in ancient temples, Etruscan and Greek temples. And here again, I took the corn and did an Iowa version of an ancient Greek and Etruscan architectural motif, which was kind of fun. And birds are popping up again. And I'm not sure why barn swallows seem to be. Oh, I know why it was. I was sitting in our garage with my wife drinking coffee, and these barn swallows kept flying into the garage and in and out. And I thought, oh, barn swallow tattoos. Of course. Why didn't I think of that sooner? Anyway, so it's barn swallow tattoos, which you see on sailors back in the old days. And it turns out that a sailor could tattoo a barn swallow, I think, for every 3,000 nautical miles that he traveled in his time at sea. I think that if that's not exactly right, it's the idea. So anyway, if life is a journey, and if having a physical disability presents particular challenges on that journey, then these barn swallows make kind of makes a little bit of sense. And of course, they've got the ribbons that you see in tattoos. And I looked at lots of tattoos online and found lettering that I liked. And so I added the Latin. I like Latin. I like Roman numerals. I don't read or speak Latin by any remote degree. But carpe diem, seize the day, is what we all have to do. And the reason those ribbons are there from a real practical standpoint, those leg braces, originally I wanted to make those leg braces look like they were carved in the pediment, like you'd see on the Parthenon or something. But here again, my skill level just didn't quite meet the challenge. So I thought, I'll just have them hanging there. Like they would hang, the ancients would capture the armaments and swords and shields of defeated kings, and they would hang those as trophies. I thought, this is like a trophy. And I didn't like it just hanging there. So I thought, well, we'll have the barn swallows with a ribbon, pulling it in place, kind of like in Cinderella when the birds help Cinderella tie the bows on her ball gown. I think that's what happens. It's been a long time since I've seen it. So you can see how all these different cultural elements come into play. Got the leg brace in there okay. The pediment is still kind of empty. So I thought, you know, I'll just put some lemons in there. If life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And here again, this is the cliche coming back to bite me and say, okay, what can we do with this? And then I added just for balance, I've added a lemon down there at the bottom. That was just a kind of a cobblestone pavement. But as I worked on it, the lemon looked like it needed to float. So the cobblestone kind of morphs into a choppy sea. Cobbles on one side and little waves on the other side. And the guy on crutches, he's actually an amputee that is based on photographs that a man named Edward Muybridge took back in the 1880s and 1890s. He was doing these it's not really time-lapse photography. He would have a runway and horses or people or whatever would walk past a series of cameras and trip a shutter. There'd be a string or something. They'd trip the shutter and he would document the various phases of animal and human locomotion. And one of the series he did was a amputee on crutches. So I thought that I'm not an amputee, but that's a real visible kind of disability, handicap, and I thought it was a nice motif. So this tiny, insignificant little one-legged man is making a pilgrimage to the foot of the statue of Zeus and drawing inspiration from what that great man accomplished despite the conflicts and troubles that beset him. So that's how that happened. Oh, I forgot. The little medallions, the 3 medallions below the engraved words poliomyelitis. Those are the polio virus. So I made those look like little marble medallions. If you look in the Presbyterian Church on South Main, there are a couple of medallions with grained marble inserts. And so I've taken a very traditional architectural motif, and instead of a marble insert, I have the polio virus. Here again, it's like the birds. It's not, I didn't count all the feathers and little bits and pieces. It's a free interpretation of various versions that I found online. Oh, and then the little kernels of corn clear up in the top, the 2 corners. The black behind Franklin and Roosevelt was so powerful. The later painting with the birds and the pediment is a much lighter style. It's lighter in color. The brushwork is less heavy-handed. And there needed to be something to balance that dark. So those little kernels of corn, repeat kernels in other parts of the picture, but those little spots of black also help balance out that dark negative space at the bottom. And plus the frame we chose does the same thing. The frame is a black plank without any kind of decorative edge on the outside, which is good. Oh, one tiny little detail. This was a very subtle change. When I was working on it, before I had his index finger just brushing the edge of that magenta border. And then I realized, oh, it'd be nice to create a little more depth. So the index finger is kind of inside the border slightly, and the second finger is in front of the border. And it's barely noticeable, but it's a nice little touch.